بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين أما بعد. Today inshallah we're gonna try and finish the 7-week course inshallah if we can. What I was going to talk about today was the different types of salah first, and then talk about the wajibat of salah, the sunnah of salah, the makruh things in salah, those things which break the salah also. And then obviously I think after Isha we can have open questions and everything that, anyone can ask any questions that they want to after the Salatul Isha inshallah. Okay, first thing to say, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen wa salatu wa salamu ala nabina Muhammad. The author says, Rahimahullah Ta'ala, Babu Salatil Musafir, the chapter of the prayer of the traveler. So the important thing about the traveler's prayer, so it's a different type of prayer. When a person travels, certain things are lifted from their obligation. So a person does not have to fast, for example. It's less emphasized for them to pray the optional prayers. Like usually you would pray all the optional prayers as much as you can. It's less emphasized. You still do it if you can, but it's less emphasized as it would be if you were a resident. So certain things are lifted for the traveler. You don't have to pray Jumu'ah, for example. The traveler does not have to pray Jumu'ah. And the issue is here that we're going to talk about is that the person praying a 4 rak'ah fard salah will pray 2 rak'ahs instead. So instead of praying Dhuhr as 4 fard, you'll pray 2 fard. Asr will be 2 fard and Isha will be 2 fard, and all the other salahs will be the same. Including sunnah, nafil, everything will stay the same. 4 sunnah will stay 4 sunnah. You don't half your sunnah prayers. You still pray your 4 sunnah if you're going to pray them. But the fard will be halved, the 4 rak'ah ones. Now, when does a person become a traveler? There's always a common question. In the Hanafi madhab, you'll have several opinions today about how many miles it is. The position that I follow is the 48 miles, but you will have others like 53 or 56. You will even have slightly less than 48 sometimes as well. 53, 56, you just choose one of the valid positions and you stick to it. The one that I follow is the ulama that say 48 miles. I find that to be the most common, and it seems to be common within the madhabs as well, that's a position within the madhabs, even if it's not the dominant position in every madhab. What it's supposed to be is that a distance that they would take 3 days to travel usually. So in the time of the Prophet ﷺ, a distance that would take you about 3 days and 3 nights to travel, that's the distance which is considered the distance for travel, for Shar'i travel, and that was calculated, today's calculation, as being around 48 miles or 53 miles or 56 miles, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. So this is important, when a person leaves their town or their city, however long it takes to get to the border of the next city, so from the border of your city or town to the border of the next city or town, that must be 48 miles or 53 or 56. So it's not from your house to the hotel or wherever you're going, it's from the border of the city to the border of the city, the border of the town to the border of the town. And it doesn't have to be a straight line, it's your route that you take, as long as you're not doing it on purpose to try and go a convoluted way in order to get the miles in. Whatever route you're taking, and that is the route that you are going to take, irrelevant of the travel, then you calculate all the roads you go on, whatever distance it is from one city border to the other or one town border to the other, as long as it reaches 48 miles, that would be a traveler in the Hanafi school. Whether the travel is permissible or not. So even if a person is going to another city, wal-iyadu billah, to steal something, or he's going to drink alcohol or whatever, that journey would be haram, but the praying 2 rak'ahs will still remain. So that's one of the unique things of the Hanafi school. The other madhab say, if you're going for haram reason, then you don't get all the ease that comes with the travel. You shouldn't get that. But the Hanafi madhab says, no, that's irrelevant. The travel is what's being taken into consideration here. Okay, so that's the prayer of the traveler. up to a period of 15 days. If you're staying in a place of 15 days, full days or more, you're no longer a traveler. If you're staying less than 15 days, you will be a traveler in the place that you're going to. You will be a traveler as soon as you leave the boundary of your town or city. So say you stop on the motorway to pray and you're not got to your destination yet, you still half your prayer. Okay, because you're a traveler as soon as you leave the boundaries of your city. If your intention is, I'm going to travel the 48 miles between the cities and I'm going to go for a period of less than 15 days, then as soon as you leave your town, you're a traveler. Even if you're going to get to your destination and stay for 15 days, but the distance is 48 miles, then at least on the route, you will be a traveler still. When you get to the town or city, you'll stop being a traveler because you're in your head, you're staying there for more than 15 days. So I hope that makes sense, inshallah ta'ala. What other rulings change with this? We mentioned the wiping over the socks. That a person wipes over the leather socks, the khuffain, the leather socks, then a person can do that for 1 day and 1 night. If they're traveling, they can do it for 3 full days and 3 full nights without having to take off their socks and wash their feet. But obviously nowadays we'd all take them off before a day finishes anyway, usually, because we have access to sinks, alhamdulillah, nowadays. Okay, that's one type of prayer. The next type of prayer, Salatul Jumu'ah. We know Salatul Jumu'ah. What's unique about Jumu'ah? It's 2 rak'ahs. It has to be prayed in congregation. It can't be prayed by itself. It needs to be in an area where the public have access to. So this is the classic fatwa anyway. You'll find differences nowadays with like prisons and things like that because of special circumstances. But generally the rule is it needs to be in a public place where people can come. It needs to be a minimum of 3 people plus the imam. 3 people plus the imam in the position of Abu Hanifa. 2 people plus the imam in the position of Abu Yusuf and Muhammad, rahimahumullah. And the position of Abu Hanifa is the one where fatwa is given in the Hanafi school today. So 3 people plus the imam is a minimum for Jumu'ah. If you don't have that number, then you pray Dhuhr instead. The same applies for Eid, by the way, for the Jama'ah. You need to have a minimum of 3 people plus the imam, so 4 people total. Jumu'ah, you have 2 khutbahs before the Salah. You must do the 2 khutbahs before the Salah. The imam will give them, he will sit between them, then he'll give the second one. Then the iqamah will be given and the Salah will be prayed. Another unique thing about Jumu'ah is that 2 adhans. The first to indicate the time to everyone, the second to indicate that the khutbah is about to start. Now any business transactions that you're going to do becomes haram. So if you hear the second khutbah, you are not allowed to do any business transactions because Allah Azza wa Jal said in the Quran, when you hear the call to prayer for the day of Jumu'ah, go quickly to the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and leave off all business. So those are the special things about Jumu'ah. It takes place within the time of Dhuhr, obviously on a Friday. And it's obligatory on every man who is above the age of puberty, who is able to go, not sick, and is able to go to Jumu'ah, as long as he's not a traveler also. So the travel, sickness, being a woman, being a minor, being ill, all these things are going to give you excuses for not to go to Jumu'ah. But otherwise, the general rule is that it's obligatory to go to Jumu'ah. Eid Salah. Eid Salah is 2 rak'ahs prayed on the day of Eid in the morning. It is prayed with 6 extra takbirs. So we do 3 in the first rak'ah at the start of the rak'ah and 3 in the second rak'ah after the qira'ah, after the recitation. That's the method in the Hanafi school. And then the imam will do a khutbah after the Eid Salah, which is a sunnah khutbah. But if he does the khutbah, it becomes wajib to listen to it. And that is, and the Eid Salah itself is wajib, meaning it's compulsory to attend for the men. Again, the same rules that apply to the Jumu'ah apply to the Eid Salah in the Hanafi madhab. It's men who are not traveling, who are not ill, etc. The same rules apply. But they must come for it if they are able to. And that's every Eid. Both Eids are the same in terms of the praying of the Salah. The next is Salatul Kusuf and Salatul Khusuf. The eclipse prayers, solar eclipse, lunar eclipse prayers. That when this happens, a person is supposed to start praying Salah. A person is supposed to start praying Salah. Now, typically it's done by yourself, depending on which eclipse it is. I won't get into the details for the sake of time now. pray it by yourself, or if you're going to pray in jama'ah, then you pray it quietly. But nowadays, because of the fact that it's supposed to be a very, very long prayer also. So if it's going to be a long prayer lasting for the eclipse time, then people will not stand there for such a long time in silence. So many ulama give the position that you pray out loud. You can pray it out loud. But it's important to know that when the eclipse happens, there is a prayer that you should pray. Salatul Istisqa, the prayer of seeking rain. When a drought happens in a community, the people should go out, including the children, including the old people, including the sick people if they can, if they're able to, including the animals. Everyone should go out, pray a salah together. Obviously the animals are not going to pray, but the animals will be there, pray a salah together. Then afterwards the imam can do a khutbah, can do a talk, and the imam will turn his cloak inside out, as per the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. Why is that done? It's supposed to be in anticipation of the rain that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will send down. It's showing that we are so sure that Allah Azza wa Jal will answer our prayer. Why do all the children and the sick people and the animals go? Because they are the people that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will have more mercy on. That when those sick people come and they are not having water, it's supposed to show Allah Azza wa Jal that we're so desperate that we're asking you to answer our dua, that we're bringing everyone, even the animals who are sinless, the children who are sinless, and the old people who are weak, we are bringing them to also do dua with us, so that the prayer will be more likely to be answered. But the people who are not believers in a society, they are not supposed to attend, because obviously they're not believers, so they will not be earning the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the same way that the Muslims will, the weak people will, the children will, etc. The night prayer in Ramadan, Taraweeh, which is approaching soon inshaAllah ta'ala. Taraweeh is, in the Hanafi school, sunnah mu'akkada, meaning it's an emphasized sunnah. A person who leaves it out of habit, without an excuse, will be blameworthy in the madhab. It's 20 rak'ahs, so every single rak'ah is sunnah mu'akkada. So if you make a habit of praying 18, make a habit of praying 16, you will be neglecting the sunnah, and therefore you will be blameworthy. If you do it once or twice because there's a need, fair enough. But it's like missing your 2 sunnah of Maghrib, for example. The 2 sunnah of Maghrib is sunnah mu'akkada, you try not to miss them. Same with Taraweeh, every single rak'ah is the sunnah mu'akkada, 20 of them. And that's something which is agreed in the 4 madhabs, by the way. The 20 rak'ahs is agreed across the 4 madhabs. You will find some opinions within each madhab that say, okay, maybe 40 or 36 or 39 with the witr included, or 8. You will find 1 or 2 places as well. But the majority is 20. The agreed upon position between all 4 schools, which you will find within all 4 schools, is 20. Salatul Khawf. Oh, sorry, and Taraweeh, you have to pray after Isha. You can't start praying Taraweeh until you've prayed your Isha, and then you pray your Taraweeh, 20 rak'ahs, then you pray witr at the end. Babu Salat al-Khawf, the next prayer is the prayer of fear, which is mentioned in the Quran, that if an army are going somewhere, or they're fearing from the enemy, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, لَيْسَ عَلَيْكُمْ جُنَاحٌ أَن تَقْصُرُوا مِنَ الصَّلَاةِ إِنْ خِفْتُمْ أَن يَفْتِنَكُمُ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا. There is no blame on you if you shorten your prayer, if you are fearing fitna from the disbelievers, meaning you're fearing fitna from the enemy. Then you can shorten your prayer, meaning you don't pray 4, you pray 2 instead. The way of doing this is outlined in detail in the Quran, that it's so important to pray jama'ah that even when you're fearing for your life, you still pray jama'ah. Imagine this. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says the imam will pray and the people will pray behind him. Half the army will pray behind him. Once they have done 1 rak'ah, the army that have prayed with the imam, they've only done 1 rak'ah, they've not finished their prayer. They will pause their prayer and they will go and defend. And the other half of the army that was defending initially will come and pray their first rak'ah, and the imam will be praying his second rak'ah. So both halves of the army will pray 1 rak'ah and then go defend, and the other army will defend first and then go pray 1 rak'ah with the imam. Then the first half of the army will finish, the second half of the army will finish individually. Just like if you come to the salah late, you pray one rak'ah with the imam, you pray the second rak'ah by yourself, like that. Half the army will pray the first rak'ah with the imam, half the army will pray the second rak'ah with the imam will finish, then both halves will finish their prayer. That's how important the jama'ah is, that even when you're fearing for your life, the jama'ah is still protected, and that's mentioned within the Quran. This method of exactly how to do this is detailed in the Quran in Surah An-Nisa. Then you have the Salatul Janazah. Salatul Janazah is that prayer which there is no ruku' and no sujood, no sitting, it's just standing. A person is praying over the dead. So when a person passes away, it becomes fard kifaya, it becomes something which is obligatory on the entire Muslim community, that some people must pray janazah over this dead person. At least some. If no one prays it, everyone is sinful. If some people pray it, everyone is relieved of that obligation. Person passes away, they're put in front of the imam. The imam will say Allahu Akbar like a normal start of the salah, and the imam will read, and everyone will read the opening invocation of the prayer, Subhanakallahumma, to the end. Then the imam will say Allahu Akbar again, but he won't raise his hands. No one raises their hands, say Allahu Akbar again. Then they will read durood, Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ala ali Muhammad, to the end. Then the imam will say Allahu Akbar a third time, and now the dua for the person who's passed away will begin. So they will do the dua that is mentioned in the sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam for forgiveness for the dead person. And there are other du'as that mention forgiveness for the entire Muslim ummah as well. The imam will then do the fourth takbir, and then they will say Assalamu alaikum rahmatullah, Assalamu alaikum rahmatullah. In the Hanafi madhab, we do two salams for the janazah. And that's the funeral prayer. That's the prayer, if you remember, that we said when you laugh in the salah, if you laugh out loud in the salah, you break your salah, you break your wudu as well. Well, if it's a salah without ruku and without sujood, which is the janazah salah really, then if you laughed out loud, you break your salah but you don't break your wudu. And for the janazah salah, if you think you're going to miss it, you're allowed to do tayammum from the walls without having to do wudu. If you don't have wudu and you think you're going to miss the prayer, you do tayammum from the walls and join the prayer. So certain exceptions made for the janazah salah. Okay. And those are all the types of prayers that we mentioned today. Has anyone got another type of prayer that they can think of that we haven't mentioned? Because we mentioned all the nafil prayers, tahajjud and the like last week. Go on.
It's like a question. Do you know when you come in and you have to pray 2 rak'ahs?
Oh, good point, yeah. Tahiyyatul Masjid, the entering of the masjid prayer, the welcoming of the masjid prayer, that's a sunnah ghayr mu'akkada in the Hanafi school, meaning it's a sunnah, but you won't be blameworthy if you didn't do it for some reason. So generally people will say if the time for the salah is about to happen, then don't start another prayer. You should wait, you should join the start of the fard prayer. Or if the imam is doing the khutbah, you shouldn't do, in the Hanafi madhab anyway, you shouldn't start doing anything except listen to the imam, so sit down and listen to the imam. So it's not sinful if you were to sit down in the Hanafi madhab, but if you have time to pray it and there's no other reason why you can't pray it, then it's definitely something you should do if you can. Do you have a question? Anyone have a question? No? Oh yeah.
You know the traveller, if they're travelling for more than 15 days,
Yeah.
you know the initial 15 days, do they pray 2 rak'ahs? Do they have to pray all 4 rak'ahs?
If in the initial,
The first 15 days.
if your intention is that you're going to stay there for 15 days or more, from the first day you pray full. Yeah.
After Asr, before Maghrib,
Yeah.
if you come to the mosque, but you prayed Asr,
Yeah, so the makruh times that we covered last week, that's one of the makruh times.
it is not Maghrib time, but you have time.
No, so after Asr, as soon as you've prayed Asr, makruh time starts in the Hanafi school. So once you've prayed Asr, you've done your fard, even at the start time. You've got 2 hours left. It's still makruh for you.
So if you come to the mosque, then can you pray the 2 rak'ah the Prophet mentioned?
So in the Hanafi school, you can't. It'll be makruh to pray. Yeah. After Fajr, after Asr, even if it's 2 hours left till Maghrib, yeah, that's a good point. So any makruh time, we don't pray Tahiyyatul Masjid in those times. Okay. Now, let's try and get through this list. So now there's going to be a list of things. I'm just going to read out the list. These are the things which are wajib in the salah. Okay, so if you remember the 6 things which we said were fard arkan, pillars of the salah were what? The first takbir, Allahu Akbar, the standing up, the recitation of some part of the Quran, the ruku', the sajda, and the final sitting at the end of the prayer for at least the time it would take for you to say tashahhud. Up to ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluh. About 10 seconds or so, whatever it is. So those are the 6 things that if you don't do them, your salah is invalid. Now these are the wajib things that if you miss them, you need to do the sajdatul sahw that we talked about last week. Okay. So, among them are the following. To say Allahu Akbar, during the other positions of the prayer. So not the first one is compulsory, that if you missed it, your prayer is invalid anyway, but to say Allahu Akbar otherwise, and to say that specific phrase Allahu Akbar instead of any other phrase at the start of the prayer as well. That would be something wajib. To recite Fatiha is wajib. You miss it, you have to do the sajdas at the end. Apart from the 3rd and 4th rak'ah of a fard salah. Remember we said it would be sunnah to pray Fatiha in those rak'ahs, but it's not wajib. Even though you should do, because the other madhabs will say you have to pray in every rak'ah. To recite in all the other rak'ahs, meaning recite after Fatiha some surah of the Quran, in every rak'ah except the 3rd and 4th of any fard salah. To do sajda with the forehead and part of the nose on the floor. So forehead and nose should be on the floor. To do the second sajda in order. So basically all the things need to be in order, to summarize. The actions of the prayer, the standing, the sitting, etc., all needs to be in order. For every integral of the prayer, you should be still there for at least a moment. At least a moment. So, when you between the two sajdas, you see people going up and down very quickly. You need to be still when you come up from the first sajda for at least a moment, and then go into the second one. You need to have some tranquility there. The first sitting, meaning after every 2 rak'ahs to sit down, that's also a wajib of the prayer. If you forget it, like we said, the first one, not the last one, the first one, then you do 2 sajdas at the end. To recite the tashahhud, at-tahiyyatu lillahi, until ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluh, that is wajib, both in the first sitting and in the last sitting. The last sitting is fard to sit down, but the recitation itself is wajib. So if you forgot that, for example, for some reason, your prayer would still be valid as long as you sat down, but you need to do the 2 sajdas at the end to make up for it. To say the word as-salam. So to end the prayer, you say Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. As-salam, that minimum part, that is wajib. To do qunut in the witr prayer. And we said qunut is any dua. It doesn't have to be the specific dua qunut. Any dua in the witr prayer, you say Allahu Akbar in the 3rd rak'ah, and you say any dua that you know. But if you know the dua qunut, it's better to. To do the 6 takbirs in the Eid prayer, 3 in the first, 3 in the second that we talked about, those 6 are wajib. You miss them, you have to do the sajdatul sahw at the end. For the imam to recite Quran out loud. So whenever the prayer is a loud prayer, if the imam is leading the prayer, then it's wajib for him to recite out loud, or if it's quiet prayer, it's wajib for him to recite quietly. The one who is alone, it would be wajib for him to pray quietly Dhuhr and Asr and the 3rd and 4th rak'ah of every other prayer. But he has the option to read loud if it's Maghrib, Isha, Fajr in the first 2 rak'ahs. Okay, so a person praying alone, he has the option to read out loud when praying out loud is permissible, but it's wajib for the imam to pray out loud when he has to, and it's wajib for the imam and the person praying alone to pray quietly when they must to. Okay, so that's what's mentioned here in terms of the wajib actions. Now, I'll mention those things which are going to break the prayer. Okay, inshallah. Let's see here, if I can find it. Okay. To say a word of human speech, even out of forgetfulness. Meaning what? Meaning it's not Quran, it's not dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it's not dua, it's something of human speech, like saying I made a sandwich, for example. or even just the word sandwich, for example. Something of human speech that you don't associate with the salah, you don't associate with dhikr of Allah, worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that would break the salah, even if you said it forgetfully. Okay. Excessive movement. The Hanafi school is very strict on excessive movement. Excessive movement would be defined as in the relied upon position, because there's several positions in the Hanafi school. The relied upon position, if a person looking at a distance would think that that person is not praying salah because they're moving too much, that person can't be praying salah. Your salah is invalid. That would be considered too much movement. To eat even a little, meaning if a person has something external from their body and they put it into the mouth and eat, any size of thing, that would invalidate the prayer. However, if something is already in your mouth, like you've done iftar and you haven't washed your mouth out and you're going to pray maghrib, something is already in your mouth, then if it's stuck between your teeth and you take it out between your teeth with your tongue or whatever, as long as it does not exceed the size of a chickpea, then that would not break your prayer in the Hanafi madhab. If it exceeded the size of a chickpea in total, all the bits of food put together, and you swallowed that total, then it would break the prayer. To drink, meaning anything outside the body to put inside, would also break the prayer. To clear one's throat without an excuse, people don't know this. So to say without needing to, you do it for no reason, that would break the prayer. So people do that sometimes to try and indicate to other people that, oh, watch the child or watch whatever. That would break the prayer. You shouldn't do that. To cry out loud, to make a moan of pain or a moan of emotion, any crying out loud, any screaming out loud, or any indication of pain out loud that's not to do with your salah will break the prayer. If you cry because you're emotional about the dhikr of Allah, about the Quran, about standing in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and you make sounds because of that, that's excused. But to cry for another reason, I'm sad that my father has passed away or whatever, and it's not to do with the salah, or I'm in pain and I'm crying, and I make noise. It's okay to have tears, as in it won't break the prayer to have tears, but to make noise, that will break the salah. To say salam to someone who's not in the salah, to reply to their greeting or to greet them with the intention of greeting those people. Not the prayer, not the salam at the end of the prayer, because that's different, but to say salam to someone during your prayer, outside of the prayer would break the salah. To shake someone's hand would also break the salah, because it would be considered excessive movement. To respond to someone outside of the salah would break the salah. To turn one's chest away from the qibla. So if you turn your head away from the qibla, that's not broken the salah. Why? Because we say salam early sometimes and we forget and we stand up for the third rak'ah. Turning the head away does not break the salah, but turning the chest away from the qibla breaks the salah. To make dua, and we mentioned this when we talked about the description of the entire prayer, to make dua in a statement that resembles the speech of the people. To make a dua in a way that resembles the speech of the people, like we said the example was, oh Allah, marry me to so and so. Marry me to so and so. Or, oh Allah, grant me this car. It resembles the speech of the people, it's not from the Quran and the Sunnah, so that would break the prayer. To elongate the letter Hamza in the takbir. So we said, Allahu Akbar, or Allahu Akbar. That would invalidate your salah. Particularly to say Allahu Akbar, because then you're saying, is Allah the greatest? If you were to say that anywhere, that might break the salah. For one's nakedness to be uncovered for the length of time that it takes to perform an integral of the prayer. Okay. So what does that mean? That means if your nakedness, which you are supposed to cover, so for a woman it would be everything apart from the hands and the face, and if you take the position of the feet, for a man it would be from the navel to the knee. If part of that becomes uncovered to the extent of a quarter of whichever limit is, so if it was my leg, for example, it would be a quarter of that upper leg. The upper leg and the bottom leg as two separate limbs. So a quarter of whatever the surface area is of the upper leg, if that comes uncovered from my aura everywhere, then that would break the salah if I did it for a long period of time. Long period of time meaning approximately longer than it would take to say subhanallah, subhanallah, subhanallah. Because if it comes uncovered and you quickly cover it again, no problem. Okay. So for the woman, it's a bit more difficult because the awrah is so many more things. So so this is the way to explain it. Whichever limb becomes uncovered, you take a quarter of that limb. If a quarter of that limb surface area is exposed for more than 3 tasbeehs, subhanallah, 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 the prayer is broken. If several limbs are exposed, then you take the smallest limb and you take a quarter of that, and whatever a quarter of that is in surface area, you take the total of the amount of area which is exposed of the awrah, compare it to a quarter of the smallest limb which is exposed. If that is exposed for more than 3 tasbeehs, that will break the prayer. So for a woman, if her ear is exposed, for example, an ear is a limb. If the ear is exposed, you would measure a quarter of the ear. If the total area of the body which is exposed of the awrah equates to more than a quarter of the ear, for more than 3 tasbeehs, so like the wrist, the ankle and the ear is all exposed, it's more than a quarter of the ear, that would break the prayer in the Hanafi school. We'll pause for the adhan inshallah. Okay, so the last few things that break the salah are to have too much filth on your clothes. Remember we said if it's a major filth, then we said the amount of the circle of your hand, the circle of the palm of your hand, that little amount there, the amount of a coin size basically in the olden days, that's what it's supposed to be. If you have that much on your clothes of major filth, it would break your prayer, more than that. And as for the lesser filth, then we covered that earlier in the classes. Lesser filth is about a quarter of the garments or whatever, depending on the type of filth that it is. So to have more than the excused amount of filth will break your prayer. If you go ahead of the imam, to the extent that you miss the imam in that position. So say you're going to sajda, you do your sajda before the imam, and you start to come up before the imam even went into sajda, before the imam got to that position, then you've broken your salah. So in the Hanafi school, if you get to the position before the imam, but then you wait there until the imam gets there, then it's sinful, it's makruh, but at least your prayer is valid. If you start to move to the next position before the imam even got to the first position, then you've broken your prayer. To miss an integral of the prayer and not make it up later before the end of the prayer. So the fard things that we said, like ruku, sujood, the final sitting, the qira'ah, the standing, all these things, to miss one of those and not make it up before the end of the prayer, and you finish your prayer is invalid because you've missed out a fard component. Okay. Now, I'll just run through the list of things which are makruh and then we'll finish inshallah ta'ala. And then we can ask any questions after the salah, inshallah. So things which are makruh, to miss any sunnah or wajib act without an excuse. To fiddle around during the prayer with your clothing or whatever. To wipe away pebbles from the ground that you're praying on, except for one movement to clear the way for your sajda. One movement is allowed to clear the way for your sajda. To crack one's knuckles. To place one's hands on one's hips. To turn one's neck, meaning we said the chest is away from the qibla will break your salah, but to turn the neck away or the face away is makruh if you're doing it without doing the salam. To sit with one's knees up. To sit in a way with one's knees up instead of sitting the way that you should be sitting. To put one's forearms for a man on the ground in sajda. We see many people doing that you put your forearm on the ground for sajda. This is against the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, and it's makruh. To roll up the sleeves. People not aware of this, that rolling up the sleeves, or even rolling up the ankle, the trousers when there's no need to. Say your trousers are already above your ankles, you don't need to roll them up is makruh, especially in an untidy way. Your clothing should be the way it's supposed to be, basically, because you're standing in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Rolling up things generally is not something you would do in front of someone respectable. You would generally have your clothes the way that they are designed to be. So rolling up your sleeves should not be done, unless there's a specific reason why, obviously. And if you do roll up your trousers, it should be done very neatly, so that you're standing in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with awe. To pray in one's lower garment without something covering the top of the body. So in the other madhabs, you wouldn't be allowed to do that at all. In the Hanafi madhab, it's makruh to not have something covering the top half of your body. 2, pick up your clothes before you go into sajda. To gather your clothes before you go into sajda. Too much movement this would be. 2, put a shawl on one's head or shoulders, letting both ends hang below. So people have a scarf, it lets both ends hang below. Why is that makruh? Because it will distract you when you go into ruku. It will be swinging around. To close one's eyes, meaning without need to concentrate. To yawn, and especially to yawn without covering your mouth. A yawn should be suppressed as much as possible. To stretch, to cover one's nose and mouth, to prostrate with the forehead covered, to prostrate on a picture of an animate object, to pray in a road, toilet or graveyard, to pray near something which is dirty, to pray on stolen property or a stolen garment, to pray while needing to go to the toilet. This is a common one. If you need to go to the toilet, you should ideally go to the toilet, then come back and complete your prayer, so that you're not focusing on that, you're focusing on Allah Azza wa Jal. To pray in work clothes, to pray in a garment where there is a picture of an animate object, that's another one. To pray in something where there's an animal which is alive on your clothing, or a picture of something alive on your clothing, that would be makruh. That should be avoided. It won't break the prayer, but it should be avoided. Anything which will distract you will be makruh. You shouldn't pray in jama'ah if you're praying by yourself in a row, one of you in a row. Even though the prayer will be valid, that would be makruh to do if you're on one row by yourself. Okay. Inshallah, we will. Oh, there's only one thing left actually. To wipe dirt away from the face, that will distract him during the prayer. So, to do so would all be actions of makruh. So, after the Isha Salah, inshallah, I'll be sitting at the back, and anyone who wants to ask any questions, we can have a free question session, because this is likely the last session on this particular topic, inshallah. But we're going to be doing different topics, maybe a week or two's break. We'll cover the fiqh of Ramadan, inshallah. So join the group chat. There's a QR code at the entrance to the masjid. Everyone join the group chat, and when the fiqh of Ramadan comes, the classes come maybe in 1 or 2 weeks, inshallah. We'll start doing that for 2 sessions. Everyone can join that, inshallah, on this same time and place, inshallah. Walhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen.